What's up guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg, checking out the new MacBook for 2016. So this really is a spec upgrade from the model that launched a year ago. So we don't see any changes externally, all the changes happened on the inside. But we also get a new color, so we have rose gold in addition to space gray, gold, and silver, and of course, we'll take a look at all of them in this video. Now there are two stock configurations, one for $12.99 and the other for $15.99. We'll take a look at both of them in this video, but both of them come with 8 gigs of faster RAM this year, in addition to Intel's HD Graphics 515 GPUs. We also have faster storage, with the baseline starting off at 256 and the upgraded model at 512. But if you want to go all out, you can custom order this with a 1.3 GHz Core M7 processor. Now the boxes themselves do indicate which color MacBook we have, but the one I want to take a look at in this unboxing is the rose gold MacBook. I haven't unboxed one of those before. Now the rose gold version I have here is the base configuration, the cheapest configuration, which you can see on the back with the specs highlighted. Now the first thing I'm going to do here is remove all the plastic, and once I do that, I can go ahead and lift the lid. First thing we'll see here is our frosty rose gold MacBook, and that's because we have a plastic sleeve covering it. So once we lift this up out of the box, we can go ahead and peel this off to reveal our naked rose gold MacBook. It's a really stunning color. It's definitely more vibrant and something a little more ostentatious than the other colors. So setting that aside, let's get to the packaging. The first thing I want to take a look at here is the paperwork, and the paperwork package does have rose gold lettering, so again, nice attention to detail here. We can go ahead and pop this open, and inside we'll find a surprise here. So this does include a set of rose gold Apple stickers. In fact, all of the MacBooks here have matching Apple stickers, so they all match the colors of their MacBook, so it's kind of nice. This is the only product Apple does this with, so it'd be kind of nice if they did this with the iPads or the iPhones, but they don't. Also included is a 29-watt power adapter. So again, this is a travel charger. It does have a USB Type-C connector in addition to removable prongs. So you can fold out these prongs, snap them off, and add extension cables or international wall adapters. And of course, included once again is a USB-C to USB-C cable. Now, as I said, I also picked up a Core M5 version of this laptop, and that is this gold version. So you can find those upgraded specs along the back. So we're going to use this gold next to the rose gold to compare the two speed differences. Now, as always, the hinge of the MacBook is perfectly weighted, so you can easily lift the lid with a single finger without lifting up the entire laptop. And inside we'll find a piece of paper covering the glass display to protect it during shipping. We can go ahead and remove that. So the design of the MacBook is unchanged once again, but we do have this beautiful aluminum unibody design that's basically milled from one piece of metal, so there are very few parts that make up the design of the MacBook. The entire lid of the MacBook is one piece of aluminum right down to the hinge, and we have an inset Apple logo, which is a piece of polished stainless steel which matches the color of the MacBook you chose. So taking a close look at the hardware, it is going to be a bit of deja vu here. We have the same 12-inch LED backlit display with IPS technology. That gives us a resolution of 2304 by 1440, good for 226 pixels per inch. So that's a really stunning display, but it does not get the improved display technology from the 5K iMac or the new iPad Pro. But this remains a fantastic display. It's very clear and crisp with good contrast, color reproduction. It's nice and bright with good off-axis viewing angles, and we have a nice anti-reflective coating on here which really mitigates glare on this glass display. Also at the top of the display unchanged is a 480p FaceTime camera with an LED indicator next to it and an ambient light sensor. Unfortunately, this isn't a great camera, but it does get the job done in most situations. It would be nice if they could figure a way to make this at least a 720p camera like the rest of the MacBook lineup. The hinge is also all metal, unlike the other MacBooks which integrate the antennas in that spot. In the case of the MacBook, the antennas are integrated into the chassis. And since the MacBook is a fanless computer, you won't find much ventilation in the chassis. Once again, the back panel is one piece of aluminum, which is held on with these pentalobular screws. Now, these screws are color matched to the MacBook, so they pay a lot of attention to detail. Of course, we also have these black plastic feet to protect the bottom of the MacBook. Now, once again, along the left side, we have one USB Type-C connector, so they still haven't added a second one, which I think is disappointing to a lot of people. So basically, everything passes through this single USB port, which means you will likely need adapters, and Apple doesn't include them with your MacBook purchase, so you will have to purchase them separately, so keep those costs in mind when purchasing them. Also unchanged on the right side is our combination headphone jack and audio input for microphones. We also have a set of dual microphones. Incidentally, the silver version is the only one with a white insert. The others are black. Now taking a look at our keyboard and trackpad, this is where a lot of innovation and changes have happened in order to enable this ultra-thin design. So one of them is this keyboard, which features a dome switch, a stainless steel dome switch, plus a butterfly mechanism. The idea here is that because the keys are so shallow, you need larger keys to strike so you don't miss them, because you can't feel them as well as you could with previous MacBooks. So that means no matter where you strike these keys, they feel nice and even, as opposed to other larger keys which kind of wobble when you hit them. Now I've been using the keyboard for about a year. And the great thing about this keyboard is that it's very light. You don't have to apply a lot of pressure in order to register a click. So that makes the keyboard extremely fast. There's less mechanical action and you don't have to press as hard in order for the mechanism to work. So once you get used to this keyboard, you can type really fast, and that's one of my favorite aspects of it. The other big story here is that each key has an individual LED light, so the lighting looks a little crisper, a little sharper, maybe a little brighter, and there's less leaking around the keys. So if you compare this to the MacBook Pro with Retina display, you can see there's a lot of light leaking around the edges, and the lighting on the keys are a lot softer. With the MacBook, it looks a lot more precise, a lot clearer, although there is still some leaking around the keys, but otherwise it looks definitely a lot better. Now the trackpad on the MacBook is relatively large compared to other MacBooks, which takes up a significant portion of the palm rest, but never seems to get in the way. Now the Force Touch trackpad eliminates the physical click of a traditional trackpad and instead replicates the click with a vibration motor. They call this the Taptic Engine. The effect is completely indistinguishable from a physical click. It's really kind of amazing. It creates the sensation that the trackpad is physically moving even though it's completely stationary. Now because the trackpad is stationary, that means you can press anywhere on the surface and receive the same feedback. This is unlike a traditional trackpad, which is hinged toward the top, so it's stiffer when you try to press at the top. Once again, the MacBook has an impressive set of speakers, especially for something so small and thin. So the speakers are located toward the top above the keyboard, just below the display, and they sound really immersive. They're nice and full with a good amount of detail without distortion. Now there isn't a lot of bass here, but they still sound really open and clear. They're definitely excellent sounding speakers and some of the best sounding speakers I've ever heard on a laptop. Now next up, let's go ahead and listen to how this MacBook sounds compared to the other MacBooks. Now I did reuse this clip from my original MacBook review, but again, these are features that haven't changed.
We've designed a force sensing multi-touch trackpad. This adds a new dimension of interaction. Touch sensors make the entire glass surface active. Force sensors measure a wide range of pressure, from the lightest tap to the deepest press. The pressure you apply activates an electromagnet that responds with tactile feedback. So now instead of just seeing what's happening on the screen, you feel it too.
So the biggest news for 2016 are the new processors. So the best way to test this out is to take a look at some benchmarks. So first up is Geekbench. So the Skylake processor sees a single core score of around 2500 over 5000 versus 2400 over 4600 for the baseline configuration from last year. So that's a pretty modest gain here, about 20%. Now in terms of the two configurations, the M3 versus the M5, the M3 again around 2500 over 5000 versus 2800 over 5900. So again, a lot of performance there gained by that M5 processor. It's also worth mentioning that the iPad Pro outperforms the M3 processor and even outperforms the single core score of the M5. Now in terms of our graphics benchmarks, we're going to use Cinebench once again to test out the new HD Graphics 515 GPU. That replaces the HD Graphics 5300 GPU from last year. So that delivers an OpenGL score of 20 frames per second and a CPU score of 214. That's a modest gain from the 18 frames per second and 204 on the CPU score from last year. Now if we compare that to the M5, same OpenGL score, but the CPU score is much higher at 246. So in terms of graphics performance, the upgraded model is really only useful on the CPU side. Now the biggest gains happen with the new SSDs, and there are differences between the two capacities. So the baseline 256 gig SSD sees a read speed at around 1000 megs. That's twice as fast as the previous generation. The write speed is up about 50%. Now the 512 gig SSD also reads at about 1000 megs per second, but the write speed is higher at around 800 megs, which is double the previous generation. So if you want the fastest SSD, go for the 512. Battery life has also increased from 9 to 10 hours, and that's thanks to Skylake in addition to a larger battery, which jumps from 39.7 watt hours to 41.4. So generally speaking, I don't think the spec upgrades really change the role of the MacBook. This is still a lightweight computer, and the specs don't even bring it up to iPad Pro performance. But of course, OS X works fantastic on this computer, and unless you have video editing needs or need to run a lot of 3D accelerated software or gaming, this is not the best computer for you. But for most people, this is more than enough, and it's a computer I love using. However, this is still a computer with MacBook Pro pricing, and ultimately trades flexibility and power for its ultra-portable design. So this remains a tough recommendation, but generally speaking, I recommend the MacBook Pro if this is your main computer, but this is a great ultra-portable option if you have something more powerful at home. Alright guys, so that's going to do it for me in this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up to let me know, and I'll see you again in the next video.